What if I told you that Princeley Umanmielen was actually the key to making the Ole Miss defense elite in 2024 and not Walter Nolen? This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Princeley Umanmielen and the defense and how he is the key to making that defense elite. Jaxson Dart signed a unique NIL deal that could potentially help this team. FanDuel has some more odds that they've released for the 2024 season, and that Kylan Deere is nearing that fifth star. Also, this week on the show, we have Keith Carter coming on. He's going to spend some time with us as well. And so be sure to subscribe so on the channel you can catch it. We're going to start interviewing players that have transferred in over the next couple of weeks. And this way, if you subscribe, you will be sure to catch it as part of our, I guess you could say, relationship with the Grove Collective. We're also going to be getting a link from the Grove Collective that can help you when you sign up for the Grove Collective. So we'll tell you all of that stuff. Subscribe now so you don't miss a thing. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. You know, Ole Miss dominated the transfer portal. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by that. But Ole Miss dominated the transfer portal and brought in Walter Nolen, who is the top-rated player to ever go into the transfer portal. Ole Miss signed that guy. But that guy is probably not the key for what Ole Miss can be defensively. And simply put, that guy is Princeley Umanmielen, in my opinion. Princeley Umanmielen is a pass rush specialist. He was the number 2 player in the portal, an edge coming out. Princeley Umanmielen from the Florida Gators. He had a 21.9 pass rush win rate this year, which is 5th amongst all edge defenders in the nation. The junior's 19.1% pressure rate this season was also 9th in that same group. The year before, 78.8 run defense grade by Umanmielen, trailed only Will Anderson Jr. That's some pretty heady company to be in. Umanmielen will stay in the SEC and play for Ole Miss next season. You can see below his PFF grades, and you can see his junior grades. He jumped up. Florida changed defensive coordinators between his junior and senior year, and I think that had a little bit of effect on what happened. In fact, Florida brought in another defensive coordinator this year, so he's probably why not change it out as well? If you look at him in 2022, this was the write-up of him being the number 10 edge player in college football at Florida before this season. And it says, while Umanmielen's production last season was strong, his numbers might underrate his actual play. Umanmielen would like to finish his pressures with a sack more often, but he did generate 23 pressures overall on 220 pass rush snaps per PFF, and thus did affect opposing quarterbacks in the pocket on a regular basis. If Umanmielen can seal the deal more often, he will go early in the 2024 NFL draft, which obviously is at Ole Miss, not in the draft, but 6'5", 240 pounds, pure size, pure athleticism. He just needs to put it all together. And that's what we're going to be looking at of what he can do. This pass rush specialist, and Ole Miss, Cedric Johnson got after the quarterback last year. Isaac Ukwu got after the quarterback last year. Jared Ivey got after the quarterback last year. Ole Miss was like 13th in the country in sacks. They were able to generate pressures on the quarterback. So before anybody tells you they have a problem on the defensive line position coming into this year, no, last year they were good. And this takes good to at least great maybe elite. And let me explain why. You have Walter Nolen in the middle because we're not going to downplay him coming to Ole Miss at all. I just think in the defensive scheme of things as it is, Princeley Umanmielen might hold a higher card. But Walter Nolen is going to be a very good player. J.J. Pegues, who was the alpha dog of this defense, who was the number one defensive lineman for Ole Miss a year ago, he comes back as well. He gets to be the number 3 option now. And then you have Jared Ivey, who won Peach Bowl defensive MVP, lining up as well. So we can be very, very excited about what will be happening on the defensive line, especially in that front four. I think the Ole Miss defensive line has a chance to be the top defensive line in the SEC. And by proxy, if you're the top defensive line in the SEC, you're in the discussion at the very least for top defensive line in the country. But what is that pass rush going to bring? I always talk about how it could affect the defense and help things out. What can that pass rush do in getting to the quarterback? Well, you have a situation where last season against Georgia, Carson Beck didn't get touched. Now, part of that was you couldn't play man coverage on their wide receivers. They were too athletic, too good, and they were just more athletic than you were on the outside. You didn't have the pass rush to kind of speed things up, so Georgia was able to do these long developing plays, and it put your defense at a point where Carson Beck just didn't get touched. Georgia could run the ball. They could pass the ball. Ole Miss couldn't stop either one because they couldn't win in the pass game. They couldn't play man coverage. They couldn't line up and stack the box and make it to where one thing has to beat you. It was a situation to where one thing was controlling everything. You couldn't play man coverage on the back end, so you couldn't stack the box, which means Georgia's running attack was running against light boxes, and they were throwing the ball basically into holes of zones because you couldn't generate a pass rush or anything like that. Well, Princeley Umanmielen is going to set it up to where when a quarterback was having 2.5, 3 seconds to throw the football, it's going to be down to 2 seconds to throw the ball. And with Walter Nolen in the middle, that's going to basically mean that double teams have to get taken up all over the defensive line. And there's a lot of people that can get after the quarterback. Double teams required for Princeley Umanmielen and Walter Nolen means that J.J. Pegues and Jared Ivey are likely going to be single blocked. And if that means they're going to be able to get after the quarterback, which means when a good, competent offense was after it, you have to blitz less. You can rely on your front four more. You have less time to cover the receiver in man coverage. And the linebackers are free to move sideline to sideline. It helps your whole defense when you have a front four as talented as this one's going to be. I mean, it's basic football 101. It's why the SEC has been so dominant over the last 20 years is because the defensive line has been special. Alabama and Georgia. What has Alabama and Georgia done over the past 20 years that makes them so special other than having just a bunch of dudes on the field? But schematically, they do something interesting as well. They knew that if you got real men inside at defensive line, they understood that if you did that and forced a double team on both of them, you could use up that and allow outside rushers to have one-on-ones, to have free reign to the quarterback. Interesting stuff. And Ole Miss, for the first time, probably since at least 2008, but maybe all the way back to like 1992 with Tim Bowens and Norman Hand and those guys, Ole Miss is going to be able to do that on the defensive line, which is going to make the rest of the defense work better because, like I said, instead of 3 seconds having to cover people, it's at 2 seconds. Instead of you are allowed to stack the box a little bit more because you are going to play a lot more man coverage on the outside. Now, Pete Golding is from the Alabama school, which means a matchup zone is going to be always a part of his arsenal. It just is. It's going to be about him mixing and matching and keeping things in front of you. But I think they're going to do it from a disguise point of man coverage on the outside to where you're playing bump and run, where you have Chris Graves and you have Trey Amos, and you're like, hey, we're athletic enough to stay with you. We're going to affect your timing right off and hopefully Princeley Umanmielen or Walter Nolen or JJ Pegues or Jared Ivey can get home. But the threat of rushing the passer and the athleticism that Princeley Umanmielen has on the outside is going to be a major, major key for this defense moving forward. More than Walter Nolen, more than Pooh Paul, more than Trey Amos, more than Morian Walker, more than the numerous safeties that Ole Miss has recruited. They're all going to play a role. They're all going to be good ball players. The player that could have the most impact defensively for the whole defense, for a whole elite defense, is Princeley Umanmielen. And to me, that's pretty cool, honestly. To me, that is something to keep an eye on. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. Jaxson Dart just got a really cool NIL deal as a part of Ole Miss being the it team in college football this year. And we will talk about that next. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seats, the best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have easy-to-find and buy tickets of every kind of event in your area. They have views from all the seats in the venue, and they have all-in prices that show your total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Click, click, you're there, you're done. And Game Time even has tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with zone deals, you can pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats for big-time savings. And with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. LOCKEDON, all one word. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. So it's a really cool thing that has happened where Jaxson Dart is kind of becoming one of the it players in college football. He's getting Heisman buzz. He's a charismatic guy. He's somebody that is good to have associated with your brand. And now it is starting to become national. And he signed a NIL deal with Nicholas Ayer, and it's the first NIL private jet deal. Heisman candidate Jaxson Dart is signed with Nicholas Ayer. Endorsement provides Dart's hours to Nicholas Ayer's fleet of jets for travel, training, and for philanthropy. The deal is done by ESM. ESM has been, I don't know if the right word is hired. I'm not sure exactly how you talk about that, but he's been hired to handle his NIL representation as well. This is the Heisman candidate that's going to start appearing in many different places. It would not surprise me if Jaxson Dart was the Fansville player for next football season. It would totally not surprise me if Jaxson Dart is on that level because of his charisma and all of that stuff. Jaxson Dart has a chance to be essentially everywhere in the 2024 football season, and they're taking steps right now to make that happen. And the reason it's happening is because Ole Miss is kind of the it team in college football, and Jaxson Dart is a top 10 favorite type for the Heisman Trophy. FanDuel released some lines, some odds for winning. I guess 1,800, that's like 18-1 if you want to look at it like that. Jaxson Dart winning the Heisman Trophy. I think he's like 7th or 8th on the list. He's like with Garrett Nussmeier and a bunch of guys in the SEC that on teams that have a chance to be pretty good. But Jaxson Dart is on that list. And if you look at the names on that list, Jaxson Dart, like we told you before, is one of the most charismatic player in all of the players that are being listed right now. And Jaxson Dart being a top 10 Heisman preseason finalist is a pretty good deal indeed. Now, Ole Miss football is not alone. That's not the only lines that came out. One of the odds that came out was national championship odds. Ole Miss has a 1,500 plus 1,500. That's a 15-1 shot, I think, to win the national championship currently through FanDuel. I don't think Ole Miss has had betting odds that low to win a national championship, definitely in my lifetime. That's never happened in my lifetime. But I don't even know if you could, even if you could bet on this stuff back in the late 50s, early 60s, if Ole Miss was even there. You have a situation where this tells you that Ole Miss is kind of that it team that everybody needs to pay attention to. Plus 1,500 on the national championship odds. That's an incredibly low number. But look at that in the SEC. That's like 6.5-1 if my betting vernacular is correct. He's plus 650 to win the SEC title. If you look at it, one thing that we need to talk about is the SEC winners, the odds. Ole Miss is third. Georgia is obviously the leader at plus 185. Texas is second at plus 300. Then you have Ole Miss. Then you have Alabama at plus 950. You have LSU at plus 950. You have Tennessee at plus 1,100. You have Missouri at plus 1,500, which I think Missouri might be a little low there. I don't think they're going to win the SEC, but I think that number's a little low. A&M's at plus 2,000. They're a little high. Oklahoma's at plus 4,000. Auburn's at plus 5,000. Kentucky's at plus 9,000. South Carolina's at plus 10,000. Florida, good grief, is at plus 11,000. Arkansas is at plus 15,000. Mississippi State's at plus 20,000. And Vanderbilt bringing it in the rear at plus $50,000. Now, if you look at the national championship winning odds, Georgia is the leader in the clubhouse there as well at plus 300. Ohio State at plus 480. Texas at plus 700. Oregon at plus 850. Alabama at plus 1,200. LSU at plus 1,500. Michigan at 1,500. And Ole Miss is at 1,500 as well. Really interesting stuff. If you want to talk about the Heisman Trophy odds, Nico Umanmielen has really good odds to win the Heisman Trophy. He's actually ahead of Jaxson Dart. But you have Quinn Ewers, you have Carson Beck, you have Jalen Milroe, Nico Umanmielen, Garrett Nussmeier, and then Jaxson Dart on the list for favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. Ole Miss is the it team, and this is probably rubbing some people the wrong way. And this is the reason we're talking about this over and over and over again, because it is a storyline. Jaxson Dart getting this NIL deal, this is an NIL deal that last year Caleb Williams would have gotten, for instance. So Jaxson Dart has a chance to be the it quarterback. You know, Carson Beck is probably really good, really talented. He's going to have a hard time getting endorsements. And when you look at the players that are on the list that could show out, is it Quinn Ewers, maybe? Is it Dylan Gabriel? Kind of, maybe. Jalen Milroe, who struggled so mightily against Michigan just a year ago. I think there's a reason Jaxson Dart has a chance to excel in the commercial space as the Ole Miss quarterback. And the Ole Miss quarterback doesn't really mean as much as everybody else. Just there's nobody out there with that gravitas that can even carry a 30-second period. You know, it's a lot more players that are closer to what Bryce Young was than what Caleb Williams was in the Fansville stuff. So we will see. We know that Jaxson Dart has hired representation with a major firm that is probably about to big game hunt in terms of advertising. So be prepared to see this player just about everywhere. He's already signed deals with Gillette, Nicholas Ayer. I think you're going to see this football player just about everywhere moving forward. I'm pretty excited and good for him. It'll be nice to have an Ole Miss quarterback just everywhere. Maybe they'll change the colors of the uniform on the Fansville stuff because that's a little bit too much maroon. Or maybe he'll be playing for State in that situation, or in Tech, or whoever the other team is. Maybe he'll be playing for them. I don't know. I'm pretty excited about what could happen. But everything amongst the brand of Ole Miss football right now, between Lane Kiffin and Jaxson Dart, cool uniforms, really fun atmosphere, great reputation, and a thriving collective. It's all signs are pointing to, hey, this is an it school. And so everybody should enjoy it and kind of, just sit back and enjoy what's going on. Still to come on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A Kylan Deer is creeping up the charts towards 5-star. We talk about the latest update and what's going on with this young man. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with winning any $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your new NBA players and teams with quick bets, same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the Everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the Fire TV and the Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. Now, one thing that is pretty cool, and we've talked about a Kylan several times on this show. There's some players that ranking wise are going to be higher up on the list, although not many when we put up what we're going to put up. But the most important player in the state of Mississippi, I think, for Ole Miss is the Kylan Deer. I'm not saying that Ole Miss is going to get him. I think Ole Miss is going to completely shoot their shot. But you're dealing with a running back. He's over 200 pounds. I think he's over 6 foot. But when he runs, he looks much smaller. He looks like somebody's 5'10", 190 pounds. The typical high school scat back type backs. And then you find out that he is this side. It's like, man, he carries that weight so well. And because of that, he is shown out. He went to the Under Armour Combine in Atlanta, Georgia, got an invite to the Under Armour Next All-American game. I'll be there next January as well. And he accepted that invitation. Pretty fired up about all of that. That shows you the trajectory that this young man is on. This is from On3, okay? This is his consensus rankings. He is a consensus 4-star currently in high school football. His lowest is 24/7. He's ranked 170th on 24/7, 145 on Rivals, 58 on ESPN. And the reason ESPN's important, I know everybody's going to poo-poo the ESPN rankings. The ESPN rankings is really based a lot off of the Under Armour people that are scouting for the Under Armour game. They're kind of working together. So whenever you're looking for Under Armour All-American game type person, you need to look at the ESPN rankings to see exactly how they feel about it. And then you have On3, and he comes in at I think 37 nationally on On3, which, if we're going to be real about it, usually there's about 35 5-stars in a particular class, which would put a Kylan Deer right on the threshold of getting that 5th star. He's getting close. He's nearing it. And he's going to be playing, in Quitman High School. Back in my day, Quitman was in my district, by the way, whenever I played high school football. I should say played high school football. We went to Quitman exactly one time. But one of the 2 or 3 events that I most remember from playing football was when we played at Quitman High School. Now, McGee at that time lost 1 or 2 regular season games in my high school career. I think 1, actually. I think we got beat by Taylorsville. And got right and moved on. But I think it's been a long time. It's been like 30 years. But we played Quitman and we beat the heck out of them. It was like 63-7 was the final. Quitman was not a very good football team back then. But this is the reason I remember that game. Okay. I mentioned it was like 63-7 or something like that. I kicked off. I was a place kicker. I weighed 130 pounds soaking wet. I was every high school kid that was just gangly and awkward that you saw going around to school somewhere. That was me. And I was a place kicker and it was fine. I didn't need to put on that weight. I get it. And I kicked off and the kickoff was returned. And this was the one time that a player broke it. He actually broke out. It was the one time where me playing a safety valve was necessary. And to my credit, okay, to my ever-loving credit, I was able to funnel him towards the sideline. Now, he wasn't going to run out of bounds because I was essentially paper in front of him at that point. He was going to try and run through me if it came down to it, and it did. He hit me, knocked me back. The back of my helmet was about the first thing to hit the ground. But this is the key. Whenever he was running over me, his cleats hit my face mask, which tripped him up, which I told coach after that was over. And the coach played that like 15 times for the team, having a good laugh at my expense. But I made a point to say, he did not score a touchdown. That was not on me. I did my job going up and trying to tackle somebody that was about twice my weight. But yes, that player tripping on my face mask, and the only thing, just back of the head. I mean, he lowered his shoulder, hit me. I went straight down. It looked like a office linebacker, if anybody remembers those commercials back in the day. That's the type of hit that I got hit with. But he hit my face mask, and that tripped him up. And I ended up saving a touchdown by getting run over and thoroughly embarrassed. Like I said, I was like 130 pounds. Looking back on it, it's not something that it's not as embarrassing now as it was when it happened. But yeah, it was pretty good. That is my Quitman High School memory. I appreciate you engaging a little bit with me. But yeah, that I will always remember Quitman High. And I remember because of a baseball trip I was on, that there was a food fight on the bus, and that resulted in the whole team having to do a whole bunch of stuff. So that was my 2 Quitman away game experiences that I remember. And it's weird that I don't remember going to West Jones. I don't remember going to Northeast Jones. I don't remember going to R.H. Watkins or Laurel, but I do remember those 2 Quitman trips. And that's kind of interesting, I guess. But Kylan Deere is nearing that 5th star. I think he's going to get that 5th star because he is one of the more natural running backs that I've seen in the state of Mississippi come out. He's more natural than what Cam Akers was whenever Cam Akers was a big deal a few years back. He is more natural than Dante Dowdle. He's more natural than Chris Davis, from the kid from Germantown that went to Georgia. The point is, everybody is going to recruit this player because of what he can be. He is almost a created player on a video game. That's the way he is. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. Every dayers, we will have Keith Carter slated for this weekend, and we wait on the most anticipated football season ever. You can hear about it all right here. Be sure and subscribe to it so you don't miss a thing. Hit the bell for notifications. But for your second listen, Locked On Sports has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app on Amazon Fire. And for those on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. We'll talk to you later. Hotty toddy, everyone.